Hello everyone and welcome back to Lady Arcader's Attract Mode. Today we have just a taste of what you can expect from one of the performers at Lady Arcader's Super Showcase 2023, which is happening July 6th to July 9th. We have SchalaKitty today with a mostly hinged panel about Final Fantasy VII and its queer subtext. Take it away, Schala.
Well, hello everyone. I hope you all are having a wonderful Sunday. My name is Schala. I'm going to be taking us through a mostly hinged panel on the queer themes of Final Fantasy VII, the remake, and the compilation titled Mako-Enhanced Subtext. I have my wonderful A-team with me here today, my host Abbie and my wonderful commentator Allie.
Hello!
I see what you did there.
Who basically are here so that way I don't have to talk to myself alone for 2.5 hours. But let's go ahead get started. I'll tell you a little bit about myself. So I'm SchalaKitty. You can use she, her, or z here pronouns for me. I am a longtime fan of Final Fantasy VII. Basically, from the beginning, I first played it a little after release in the spring of 1998. I used to do a lot of work with fan translation and general fan lore collection at adventchildren.net. There you go for your really old school FF7 fans. Which then a lot of that information got ported over to the live stream, which is still ongoing. And I've been a part of the RPG Valkyries, of FF4 Free Enterprise, and Lady Arcaders, and a whole bunch of other events. And yeah, that's a picture of me on the Hardy Daytona they were taking around during the lead up to the release of FF7 Remake. So totally worth standing in line for 40 minutes to get that photo.
It's fantastic. I love it.
Thank you. So let's talk a little bit about what we're going to be covering. So we're going to be discussing FF7's queer themes. We're going to do one section on world building, and then another on close readings of specific characters. So first section is called Under the Plate, the queer community in Midgar. So we're going to be just talking about world building and NPCs to create the appearance of a queer community within the city of Midgar. Then we're going to have core characters and queer underpinnings. So this is going to be queer readings of a variety of characters in FF7's story. And then we'll have a little wrap-up and a Q&A session at the end. So chat, I'm going to ask if you can try and hold questions until the end, unless you got something that is very relevant to what we are talking about right then and there. So just some concepts to keep in mind as I'm putting on this panel. These are just some baseline things that are interwoven through the whole panel. Very first up, all interpretations are my own. I absolutely welcome fellow fans to come up with their own theories and interpretations. Stuff like queer readings is definitely very much a personal thing, and your own personal experience is going to color how you read a piece of media. So obviously, these readings are just my own. We're going to be focusing on the English localizations, but I will be referencing original Japanese scripts as needed, and there is going to be one clip which will be in Japanese. Pronoun usage for characters will default to how they were referred to in universe or in official guides. There's one time when we kind of get in the weeds a little bit with pronoun usage, but that'll be later on. And when we do that, we're going to be touching upon concepts within Japanese culture, such as first-person pronoun usage as characterization and gender presentation, and we're also going to talk about portrayals of queer characters in Japanese mass media. And some of the discussions are going to be about questionable past portrayals and some of the uncomfortable scenes that are in the original game, in addition to some longer discussions about queer interpretations of antagonists. There's also going to be some screenshots with blood and some video clips with flashing effects, but I will let you know when I'm going to be showing that. And there will be spoilers! This panel is a deep dive into the world of Final Fantasy VII, and all the media connected to it is fair game for discussion, so that includes the remake as well as its ending. When I did this panel originally, the last time, it was about a few months after Remake had come out, but I think now that it's been a few years, it's a little more okay to talk about the ending. But I also will be talking about some of the recent trailers for things like Rebirth and Ever Crisis. But let's actually define what is the compilation of Final Fantasy VII for folks who might not know. So there are 8 games currently. Wait, that's 9, Schala. That's 9 games down there.
To be fair, one of them is not out yet.
To be fair, 2 of them are not out yet. Oh yeah, okay, I see what I did there. Okay, so anyway, we have the original PS1 release of FF7 and all of its ports. That usually gets referred to as the OG original game. So that was 1997. Then we have FF7 Remake, which is the first in the series of remaking FF7. And those kind of have their own variation on things. The first game covers the Midgar portion of the story. That was released in 2020. And then we have Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, which is going to be the second game in the remake series. It's going to release next year. And then for side games, we have Before Crisis. That was the Japan-only cell phone RPG focused on the Turks and takes place from about 6 years before FF7 until right before FF7 starts. And that was released in 2004. Then we had Dirge of Cerberus. That was the PS2 RPG shooter focused on Vincent Valentine, fighting against the last remnants of Shinra, known as Deep Ground. That happened 3 years post-game, and that was released in 2006. Then we had Crisis Core. That's the PSP action-oriented RPG focused on Zack Fair and Soldier from about the tail end of the Wutai War, which starts about 7 years before FF7, up until Zack's death. That was released 2007 in Japan and then 2008 in North America. And now we have Crisis Core Reunion, which is the updated re-release of Crisis Core, with overhauled graphics and new English voice acting, and a whole variety of quality of life updates. That was released at the tail end of 2022. First Soldier, that was the mobile-only battle royale game, focused on the early days of Soldier, that ran from November 2021 until January of 2023. And now we have Ever Crisis. That's going to be the upcoming turn-based mobile game that will act as a summary of other compilation titles, as well as including its own unique storylines. So there's no set release date on that. Closed beta test begins next month. But it's more than just games. There is also Advent Children. That's the CGI animated movie set 2 years post the end of the original game, with the heroes returning to fight the remnants of Sephiroth, who seek to find the remains of Genova in order to enact a second reunion. That was originally released in 2005, and then got an updated re-release called Advent Children Complete in 2009. Last Order, which is a single animated episode centered around the Nibelheim incident and Shinra's later pursuit of Zack and Cloud, which she released 2005 in Japan and then released globally with the collector's edition of Advent Children in 2007. We have On the Way to the Smile, Case of Denzel, which is a single animated episode that retells the Case of Denzel chapter from the novel On the Way to a Smile that was released in 2009 with Advent Children Complete. Speaking of On the Way to a Smile, that is a collection of short stories by the series scenario/scriptwriter Kazushige Nojima, which covers the lives of the characters in the 2 years after the end of the original game up until Advent Children. That was originally released in Japan in 2009, finally got translated and released in English in full in 2018. I'm sure if Advent Children Complete, they released some of the stories translated, but not the entire collection. Then we have The Kids Are Alright, a Turk's Side Story, which is another novel by Nojima, set just before Advent Children, centered around Evan Townshend, who is a private investigator living on Edge. That's the city that kind of springs up outside of Midgar around that time. He kind of gets swept up in the events leading up to the second reunion. Originally released in Japan in 2011, and then translated and released in English in 2019. And then finally, Traces of Two Paths, another Nojima novel that exists within the remake series and covers Tifa and Aerith exchanging stories of their past. Originally released in Japan in 2021 and translated and released in English in 2023. Okay, that's everything so far.
Oh my.
Yeah, a bunch of these things came out in between when I did this panel originally and this time, so I had to add a whole bunch. Also, I'll give a special shout out to some inspirations and references. Wonderful shout outs to Video Games Have Always Been Queer by Bo Ruberg, though it was released under their name Bonnie Ruberg. Fantastic book, if you can get your hands on it. Really good about talking about how do you do like queer readings of video games. And I'll also give a shout out to Yinza.com, who they're a fantastic Queer FF7 fan who maintains a valuable copy of the script that is completely like searchable. So if you have any questions about the content of the original FF7, you can go ahead and check there. And also just everyone who's out there recording videos and taking screenshots and just making as much FF7 content available as possible. But let's go ahead, let's start talking about Midgar. So we're going to be going under the plate, talking about Midgar's queer community in the original game and the remake. So from the start of FF7's production, the team at Square planned to begin their story in a city. Originally, this was going to be the real-life New York City, but that ended up being sort of shelved for FF7, but it's a locale that Square would bring to life in the PS1 era as the setting of Parasite Eve. The crew decided instead to create their own sprawling metropolis called Midgar. And the city is a none too subtle visual metaphor for FF7's commentaries on classism. You have this massive floating city set 300 meters in the air, literally built upon the backs of those living at the ground level. But the games, especially the remake, aim to create a sense of Midgar as a living city with its own culture, style, slang, and economic realities, even if they're skewed as they may be from the literal shadow that they're living under. Yusuke Naora, the art director, said this in an interview with Shmupilations. The work of mine that I really want people to see is, of course, Midgar. I had an image of a pizza in mind when I designed that city, and I really like how it turned out. In any event, what we really want to convey with the background was a lived-in feel. Down to the beds and individual toilets, I put a lot of detail into everything. And this modern urban setting also allowed for the first inclusion of a queer community within the Final Fantasy VII, within the Final Fantasy as a whole. There certainly have been characters that you could read as queer in previous games, like Faris in FF5 or Terra and Gogo in FF6. But the use of world building to suggest a queer community was new territory. However, it was an attempt that ultimately had many of the same issues that were present with other pieces of Japanese mass media at the time. So because of that, talking about the wall market segment in the original game can be kind of an uncomfortable experience for some people, especially when we're looking back at it from a modern Western perspective. So in my explanations, I don't seek to excuse the problems of the original sequence, but rather add context around it so we can contrast it then with the updated version. But let's start with some observations about Japanese mass media made roughly contemporary with FF7's release to give ourselves some grounding. Mark McLellan, who is an Australian professor in the fields of Japanese study and gender and sexuality studies, was writing about how Japanese mass media presented queer people in the late 90s and wrote about it several times in his scholarly articles and books. So this is from Male Homosexuality and Popular Culture in Modern Japan, Intersections, Gender History and Culture in the Asian Context, Issue 3, from January 2000. Today, homosexuality in Japan is largely conflated with cross-dressing and transgenderism due to the prominence of cross-dressed individuals featured in the media and the entertainment world. Generally, when a mainstream audience is anticipated, the homosexual man is still presented in feminine terms, although he is received with not so much sympathy as irony and humor. And this prevailing attitude towards queer people and how they should be portrayed comes into play when we arrive in Wall Market as part of the Midgar storyline. Just for a quick background refresher, Cloud gets separated from Avalanche after falling off the railings around Mako Reactor 5 and is acting as Arif's bodyguard as she guides him back to Sector 7. Along the way, they see Tifa riding into Wall Market in Sector 6, and they seek to investigate. When they learn that she's being interviewed to be a bride of Don Corneo, they seek to infiltrate his mansion and learn that only women are admitted. So Arif then suggests that Cloud disguise himself in order to accompany her inside. And while there is a bit of initial pushback from Cloud, and a lot more on Cloud later, residents of Wall Market are very open to helping the two. The dressmaker is fairly easily persuaded to not only make Cloud's dress, which he considers to be an interesting challenge, but also to point him in the direction to find a wig to go along with his outfit, because he has friends with similar tastes. And while doing so, the dressmaker notes that Cloud can find a lot of people like you at the local gym, a phrase that Cloud picks up on and he questions. This subtext of the line is a lot clearer in the Japanese version of the game, which he uses the term, I'm going to do my best to pronounce this right, onaji no shumi no ningen. So people with the same preferences or shumi is literally hobbies, but in this context carries the implications of sexual preferences. In both languages, though, Arif kind of just waves off the question. When we do arrive at the gym, we have a couple different overlapping concepts of how to portray queer people, all kind of happening at once. On the one hand, we have the type of macho gym bunny stereotype with the various bodybuilders. On the other, we have the gym's leader, beautiful bro, who presents in a more femme manner, as much as we can kind of tell from 1997 graphics, and is the one who offers Cloud with help on becoming cute. Left untranslated in the English version are the various motivational banners around the gym, with, phrases like burn man burn, muscular vitality, the way of men, the man inside the man, and as noted in the title of the slide, sensual, beautiful men. Basically everything in this gym is going to key us in on the idea that this is meant to be a gathering and meeting place for queer men. And once Cloud proves himself to them via a squat contest, he's gifted a wig. And which wig you get depends on your performance. So as pointed out by McLellan, this type of overlap between homosexuality and cross-dressing was a really common one in mainstream Japanese media. So seeing it here in FF7 really is not surprising. Now, the gym section of the Wall Market quest is required, but there's another optional side areas to explore, including the Honeybee Inn as it appears in the original game. It's one of the elements that most sticks out as problematic when looking back on it today. Even at the time, the fact that Square was able to include a full-on brothel in the middle of a Final Fantasy game is pretty surprising and shows how far they wanted to test their boundaries from their new freedom from Nintendo. Mookie, a worker at the Honeybee Inn, and the scenes around him are often cited as some of the most uncomfortable, and it's something that even was acknowledged by the dev team as part of the reasons why they wanted to do something different with the remake's depiction of Wall Market. Go ahead, Allie.
I was gonna say, like 7-year-old me had no idea, or I think I was 8 by then, had no idea that Honeybee Inn was even a thing. So they definitely hid it away a little bit.
It was definitely hidden away. It was completely optional. It's definitely something where if you go and fully explore it, it's very weird. We won't get too deep into it, but there's like, you can go like use the keyholes to peek in on the rooms, and you can definitely peek in on what is absolutely like a kink scene happening. And it's one of those things you're just like, how did we get away with this in 1997? But anyway, let's talk about the modern Wall Market. In the years since the original, especially with the announcement and development of the remake, the dev team has acknowledged that the original Wall Market falls short in a lot of ways, especially in contrast with how opinions about LGBTQ plus people have shifted, and that with the remake they could do better. So from Nojima, we have, personally, I didn't put enough thought into the black and gay stereotypes, into how they would be perceived, how they would be received. I kind of learned from the reaction that I got, and that was from 500 Years Later, an oral history of FF7. And then from Yoshinori Kitase, who was the original director and the remake producer, members of the staff poured their all into recreating and reimagining the scene. In the 23 years from the original launch, society's values have changed significantly. So we tried to preserve the humor of the original, but we approached the encounter and outcomes so that way the depiction is now much more natural and respectful for all. So let's talk a little bit about what got revamped from the original, what's brand new and fresh to the remake. I have one extra quote. When we were writing the events at the Honeybee Inn this time around, we had to keep in mind some regulations in countries where we'd be selling the game. And also taking into consideration present-day circumstances and ethics, we felt that putting every event at the Honeybee Inn, as it was originally shown, would be difficult. So we danced closely along that line to include what we could within what was possible. And that's what you see in the remake. We might have added something new and never before seen too, and that's from Tetsuya Nomura from Dengenki PlayStation Volume 686. But first of all, the remake really provides more context on the creation of Wall Market, that it started as this entertainment district before attracting the attention of the criminal cartel that now acts as its de facto, ruling force. Arif notes that the Shinra government on the plate takes an out-of-sight, out-of-mind approach to the area, something that also helps to explain why Wall Market acts as a host to the vast majority of queer NPCs, as well as a number of immigrants from Wutai, which, given the emphasis of the Wutai War and the tension between Midgar and Wutai in the remake, the concept of Wall Market as a place where even those who would be otherwise persecuted and outclassed are welcome, that's very important. The architecture and the layout of Wall Market is also updated, and you can feel the influence from various IRL entertainment districts, including Tokyo's own Nichome, which is the home to the vast majority of the city's gay bars and clubs. The image that I have here has Nichome on the top, and then Wall Market at the bottom, so you can kind of have an idea for how they have a similar vibe. The biggest departure from the original game are the quests needed in order to infiltrate the Dawn's mansion. Instead, Cloud and Aerith must seek out the approval of 2 members of Wall Market's trio, the 3 powerful entrepreneurs who wield a great deal of monetary and political power in the area. So Aerith seeks approval from Madame M, a ruthless businesswoman who runs a massage parlor, which requires that Cloud and Aerith have to win the Corneo Cup fighting tournament. Cloud's path is set for him when he captures the attention of Andrea Rodea, the owner and star of the Honeybee Inn VIP nightclub. Unlike the original, the remake presents this establishment as a combination of like a host or hostess club and a cabaret. And you can actually hear people talking about the Honeybee Inn before you ever set foot in Wall Market, if you play what I call Midgard Eavesdropping Simulator. It's a big attraction in the slums, and even like for people up on the plate, as this sort of symbol of artistry for the shows, as well as how the honey girls and honey boys cater to the clientele who spend their hard-earned gil on them. So, and in order to gain the approval of Andrea, Cloud, and thus the player, have to become a part of Andrea's performance. This is a really interesting choice to make, not only to throw the player into a sudden rhythm game segment, but also to make them actively a part of Andrea's lavish floor show. Just as a side note, Tetsuya Nomura has been wanting to do like musical numbers in games, so I'm kind of glad that we got the chance to see that realized in the remake. And while Cloud sort of puts up his nominal protest, he does go along with the whole affair in the end, and we're gonna loop back on Cloud again once, as I mentioned before. So the whole sequence is a little long, even for this panel, with like 2.5 hours. But we're going to at least watch the final section with Cloud's transformation, as it kind of encapsulates the spirit of the entire segment. So there is a flashing warning for this video, just because of how quick the cuts are. So that's why I switched over to a plain background and put up this warning. But just go ahead and like enjoy the fabulousness.
Honey, I'm in love. Yes, I will transform you into a vision of beauty. Now, without further ado, let us begin!
You were born for this.
True beauty is an expression of the heart. A thing without shame, to which notions of gender don't apply. Don't ever be afraid,
You know, it'd help if I unmuted my mic.
I wish all my makeovers could look like that.
I know, right? So there's a lot to take in. As well as a few details that are part of the larger performance. Of particular note is the song for that section, which is titled Stand Up, which there's a couple of like unique points about that song. Unlike the other lyrical in-universe songs in FF7 Remake, like Stamp's Theme or the Midgar Blues, this song is only in English. It makes sense though, because the lyrics are really clear in their messaging, because they have to be understood even by non-native English speakers. So you can hear like these very clear queer signifiers, like, you know, cast your fears aside, bear your soul with pride. You know, it makes a lot of sense. I've been volunteering and attending like a whole bunch of pride events, and like Stand Up would fit in with like some of like the pride song medleys that I've heard. And, you know, this is sort of dancing along that line that we noted earlier, that everything about the Honeybee Inn, especially in the localization, clearly states that this is a queer space. This sort of big, grandiose, like Busby Berkeley-style production that's just full of joy and celebration. So even if words like queer and gay are never literally spoken, the connotation is just as much a part of the set as the costuming. And then once in the dress, Cloud is free to explore Wall Market and get reactions from the locals, which ends up being this sort of mix of love-struck men who instantly fall for him, or just general positive reactions to the outfit. Just some like gentle reminders, like not to fight in it. Yeah, you can see like some of the different reactions that you get just sort of walking around. Also, shoutouts to Jules. We'll be talking about Jules in a bit. I do love this one if you try to go like to fight in the Coliseum. They're like, no, you can't fight in that. And then all the modders were like, yes, you can. If you go and talk to Madam M and Chocobo Sam, they'll comment on like the different dresses that get picked and why they predict that particular one. So sorry people who like either the black dress or the lavender dress, but Sam is correct that blue dress is best dress. With like the corset and like the fishnet sleeves, everything about blue dress is best.
I think all dresses are lovely.
All the dresses are lovely, but blue dress. Also, apologies to like poor little Chadley for being his inadvertent closet key. There's also ladies who make some comments as well, but it's really hard to catch them, unfortunately. Additionally, once Cloud and Aerith infiltrate the Dawn's mansion, we learn that Adrea offers like further support by getting their gear passed to them via the Dawn's lackey Leslie. Now, in the aftermath of the night, the Shinra ends up enacting a sting on Corneo and his cartel, and it sort of leaves this power vacuum in Wall Market. We don't really get a chance to see what happens afterwards, but it's really nice to hope, for a better life for the area's residents. Now, we talked a lot about the gym in the original game, so I'm just going to circle back on how it's presented in the remake. Now, the gym is now an optional area, but for those who want to fully explore Market, it's kind of a required stop. You will get directed there if you decide to take on all the Wall Market quests. So, the original Beautiful Bro is now reimagined as head trainer Jules, who has a slightly different but still playful and very literal gym bunny theme. The small storyline in the gym is that the other gym members are way too judgmental for Jules' taste, so Cloud is invited to join in on their squat contest to teach them to be more accepting and inclusive, and that's something that gets reflected in Jules' really warm and encouraging dialogue. It's just a really nice update for the area, and just presenting this gym as a place where, everyone's kind of welcome. Also, this is just a fun fact, and this is much easier to figure out in Japanese where their names rhyme, where they're Anyan and Jinyan. But Andrea and Jules are siblings. I thought that was just super cool.
I never knew that. That is awesome.
It's very. The thing is, you can find Andrea hanging out in the gym, who like he then offers like an extra like the pull-up contest that you can do as like the second sort of set of things. But yeah, Andrea and Jules, the Rodea siblings, they're fab. And there's a number of like other sort of minor NPC interactions around Wall Market that further keys us into this area as like very queer friendly. For example, there's a couple uses of they them pronouns. Aerith does so in reference to Andrea, and there's one of the Honeybee Inn patrons who does so in reference to Cloud. Unfortunately, that one's really hard to catch, so I don't have a screenshot of it. But after Cloud's performance, you can hear like a lady being like, "Oh, they look like they were having such a good time." And just these sort of like little bits of, you know, playing Midgar eavesdropping simulator. For example, you can find this one of these two bald gentlemen has a big crush on a local hairdresser, which I thought was kind of cute.
Opposites attract.
Opposites do it. You know, I mean, if you have to shave your head, you know, you kind of have that takes work. If you there's a whole section where you can hang out with Johnny. And if you do so, you have to go to the local hotel, which is kind of implied to be a love hotel. And Cloud and Johnny will be assumed to be a visiting couple, and they're sure this is fine. You know, no preferences we can accommodate. No, sir. And you get the same reaction if you come back with Cloud and Aerith both in dresses. Later on in the game, stand-up makes a reprise as part of the Power of Music side quest, where you get you find out that it is actually like a pop song, and it has fans as young as like Marlene and Betty, who are like 5 and 7, and you know, but you also have like older folks who like it too, and it's just this really nice little bit of like context that shows like this piece of queer culture just being like celebrated in Midgar. Outside of Wall Market, you can find a few other queer NPCs that sort of add this flavor to Midgar as you catch these little snippets of their lives. One of these examples is in Sector 7. You can have, there's a man who's discussing plans to adopt a child with his partner. He's like sort of like talking it out with like a friend. And I did check, in like every language, it's always a gender-neutral term for partner. There's also the I'm sorry for like the quality of this screenshot. There's also the new recruit who hangs out in front of the gate, who makes an attempt to get a date to see Loveless. And it's really hard to tell if he's kind of like talking to his commanding officer, or is he talking to Cloud, given how the dialogue sequence is activated and plays out. But really, new recruit, just ask out Cloud. He's a much better choice than the officer. Even though you have to deal with everyone else also wanting to date Cloud.
Everyone wants to date Cloud.
Everyone wants to date Cloud. We get a few like updates on what happens to Wallmark after Meteor Fall in the novels, but like most of Midgar, it's kind of abandoned by the majority of residents for fear of the infrastructure collapsing. It's kind of sad to see in light of how much the remake breathes like this life into the area, but I really do like to think that the community was able to relocate to Edge and create a new welcoming space free of both Shinra and Don Corneo's influence. Got this quote from The Kids Are All Right. There was a huge concrete wall here, which meant this had to be Wall Market, the red light district of the slums, I'd heard, as well as a place where just about anything could be found for the right price. Despite the moniker Wall Market, my destination had none of the lively hustle and bustle of a marketplace. Instead, it felt stagnant, decaying, and as still as a graveyard. So, now that we've kind of talked a lot about Midgar, a lot about queer world building, we're going to get to, like, the really big meat of this panel, which is core characters and queer underpinnings, where we're going to be talking about queer readings of some of FF7's central characters. So I'm going to go right ahead and we're going to talk about Cloud. And we're going to talk a lot about Cloud. So Cloud Strife on repression, avoidance, and closeting. So Cloud's narrative is built around this creation of false personas and the intentional distance he creates between himself and others, and this repression of his true self and nature. And all of that is really easy to read through a queer lens as someone who is deeply closeted and in denial. And, you know, he's a really complicated character, but it feels right to talk about Cloud first as our main character. And we're going to be doing some, you know, contrasting later, so it's good to start with Cloud. You know, there's a lot of, you know, big revelations that take place over the course of FF7. And one of the most pivotal is the reveal that Cloud was never a soldier first class as he claims to be. Instead, that persona of Cloud is a combination of a couple things. At the core of it are the memories that he had from Zack, who Cloud, overwrites him with himself in those memories and his retelling of events. But in terms of personality, the persona he puts on is quite different from Zack's. There's a very sharp coldness to it that's very evocative of Sephiroth's business-like pre-Nibelheim personality, along with this generalized concept of that Cloud has of what it means to be cool, to be a tough guy. Given that this personality is a combination of influences from those Cloud deeply respected and admired, it becomes this really interesting case of, do I want to be him or do I want him? And Cloud uses this mercenary facade as this barrier between himself and his trauma, as well as between himself and others. Any attempts to breach this barrier are either met with Cloud's conscious sidestepping or his unconscious rejection, which is seen as these moments of literal static in the games. And it does reflect what a lot of closeted or people who are in denial kind of go through, where you minimize and try to explain away your own queer feelings so you don't have to confront them. Pretty much any character who was involved in the Nibelheim incident has this sort of similar dividing line in their lives, but Cloud is one of the clearest and most striking. And while there are already shades of this in the original game, the remake emphasizes that for all of Cloud's tough posturing, there's a pretty big gap between the facade he presents and his actual level of maturity. This is because Cloud's emotional maturity was stunted due to his missing years as one of Hojo's experiments. So this is a concept I'm going to bring back later, so keep that in mind. So altogether, it's very easy to read Cloud during the time of the original game, and especially the remake, as deeply closeted about his queerness. And the exact nature of how Cloud is queer is going to vary by personal interpretation, since the game leaves open a number of possibilities, but the queer fandom around the game generally agrees that Cloud is not straight, and also may not be cisgender. So we can see... I forgot I had this one as the first slide up. We can see Cloud does struggle a little bit when encountering something that actively challenges this persona. The whole sequence in the Honeybee Inn is marked by Cloud being really kind of incredulous over the whole affair. But in the end, he does go along with the idea, and he does briefly acknowledge that he did in fact nail it. And even in the original game, if Cloud is chosen as the Dawn's bride, the player can have him just completely commit to the bit, have him flirt with Don Corneo, have Cloud say that Barrett is his boyfriend, and that's something that actually does contribute to the game's hidden affection levels to make Barrett more likely to be chosen as Cloud's gold saucer date later on in the game. There's also a great deal of focus on Cloud as desirable by characters of multiple genders. which is this sort of interesting queering of the common video game fantasy of playing the highly desirable, hero, and helps to further highlight the barriers Cloud puts up. Cloud doesn't really know and isn't sure of his own feelings, so he has issues responding to and reciprocating the feelings of others. And almost like all attempts to flirt with him, like no matter the gender of the other person, are sort of met with equal resistance. Aerith and Tifa, as the original two heroines, come the closest, and there are also some deeply emotional moments, such as the deaths of Biggs and Jessie, that are able to kind of pierce that barrier. But otherwise, most attempts just kind of fizzle out. And we can see Cloud, here, I'm going to change music. And we can see Cloud struggle a bit when something, actively challenges this persona. Oops. There we go. I had to scroll down. There's also a conversation to be had about whether Cloud's uncharacteristically emotional responses to Sephiroth count as, towards this sort of like highly desirable hero thing, but it's such a complex subject. For a very long time throughout the original game, Cloud's only response towards Sephiroth is a very understandable, like, anger or just confirmation on occasion of past admiration. He's able to recognize that there is a part of him that ends up bending to Sephiroth's will, but he attempts to reject it as the part of me I don't understand, and then kind of labels it as a person who is not really me. But midway through the game, Cloud has his big breakdown in the northern crater, and he just caves into all this conflicting messaging and the undeniable questions about his identity. And in that moment of Cloud's, deepest amount of weakness and submission, he gives into that part of himself, and he gives into Sephiroth. And we're going to be talking a lot more about this relationship from Sephiroth's perspective later. Cloud does eventually manage to come to terms with his past late in the original game with Tifa's help. Afterwards, he regains his true memories of Zack and comes to mourn the loss of Zack as well. And we get to see glimpses of their relationship in Crisis Core, and that game presents Cloud in a very different light. So during Crisis Core, we see like a young Cloud make these sort of like gentle overtures towards Zack over the course of several interactions. But their first meeting really helps to set the tone for the rest of the interactions. So we're just going to take a moment and watch that.
Yo! Don't fall too far behind. At least someone's keeping up.
Well, I'm a country boy too.
From where?
Nibelheim. How about you?
Me? Gungaga. Hey, what's so funny about that? You know Gungaga?
No, but it's such a backwater name.
Ditto Nibelheim.
Like you've been there.
I haven't. But there's a reactor there, right? A Mako reactor outside Midgar usually means nothing else out there. Good news, Song! Me and...
Cloud.
Me and Cloud here are both backwater experts. Oh yeah!
Good. Carry on then.
So I'm gonna be like, back to business, you two. But I really like that scene. That scene's super duper cute. Yes, best friend country boys. Heck yeah. And there's like a few other hints that we get from the interactions that Zack quickly becomes like really important in Cloud's life. Anytime that Zack, sees Cloud. Cloud sort of lights up with attention, and he's the only character who immediately leaps at Zach's invitation to go out together. There's also, which this is a running thing with Zach trying to get people to go out and have food with him. There's also several pieces of mail that Cloud sends that talk about how Zach is this inspiration in his life. So we have this one. We've been on a few missions together, and there's something I've been meaning to tell you. I was thinking about telling you once we were in my hometown, but it's a little embarrassing, so I'm going to write it out and send it to you. The day you changed your hair, when you wished us rookies good luck before our sortie. I'll never forget your words, so remembering what you said to me that day gives me the courage to stay strong, so thanks, Zach. He also, literally invites Zach to come meet his mom. It's just hey, do you want to come over to my house? I want you to try Mom's cooking. The thing is, I haven't been home yet since I've been here. I haven't been able to make up my mind about it, but I decided I should show my face. But going home alone is uncomfortable, so I was hoping you could join me. It's just oh, baby.
That's adorable.
It's so cute. But, let's actually, shift gears. Let's talk about Zach for a little while. Because compared to Cloud, he's leagues easier to talk about. So Zach Fair on Dreams, Honor, Heroism, and Emotional Bonds. So compared to Cloud, Zach is far more open with his heart and far more expressive of his emotions. He easily bonds with people of multiple genders, over the course of the game, just effortlessly allowing them into his heart. And so it's very easy to read Zach as bi or pan. He kind of was this minor but pivotal character in the original FF7. But over the course of the compilation has grown to be a major character in his own right. He first starred in the Last Order OVA before going on to be the lead in Crisis Core. And he grew really into being his own character. And as that happened, the differences between him and Cloud became more readily apparent, so that the two act more as contrasts and foils to each other. So it makes sense that while Cloud reads as very repressed and closeted, Zach kind of comes off as bi-pan with how openly affectionate he is with characters of multiple genders. He playfully flirts and tries to get dates with several characters. Aerith is the only one required by the story, but there's optional scenes with Cisne and Cloud, like we just saw, and openly expresses his affections for those closest to him. The three most important people in Zach's life end up being his mentor Angel, his girlfriend Aerith, and his best friend Cloud. So Crisis Core introduces us to Zach's affectionate nature very early on. Within the first 30 minutes of gameplay, we have a scene where he's assigned to a mission in Wutai, and his reaction to Angel's comment about a promotion recommendation just shows us the kind of person that Zach is. Also, you'll notice that I'm going to kind of be swapping back and forth between original Crisis Core and Crisis Core Reunion. I have a lot of affection for the original Crisis Core, particularly the English voice cast, and I don't know, I like the aesthetics of the original a little bit more than Reunion, but that's just me. But anyway, we have this very cute and very short little scene.
The mission is currently stuck in limbo. That's why we've decided to send you.
To Wutai?
Yes. This war has gone on long enough.
I've recommended you for first.
And Jill! Oh, I love you, man! And Jill!
Don't make me regret this, Zach.
Sir!
Once you're packed, you'll leave at once.
It's so cute. He is a little puppy dog.
He's precious.
He's precious. Now, as noted we, have been focused on the English localized versions of the games. But since this scene is so short, I'm going to play it back in the original Japanese, where there isn't any attempt to defang the I love you declaration by adding man to the end of it. Now, I know localization has to juggle a lot of different factors when choosing how to present any one particular line. There's not only translation, but also like timing. And sometimes there's just shifts in mood and connotation from one language to another. But I found this is like a nice little like comparison. Also, this is from the fan project that I helped work on to like do like a fan subbed version of Crisis Core in the 6 months it took to localize it. Do you remember when it used to take like 6 months to a year to localize games? Pepperidge Farm remembers, and so do I.
I remember as well.
我々の作戦は中断したままだ。君に行ってもらうことにする。
って、ウータイ？
ああ。この長すぎた戦争を終わらせる。
お前をファーストに推薦しておいた。アンジール！大好きなアンジロ！俺に恥をかかせるなよ。はっ！準備が整い次第、すぐに出発だ。
But even with that sort of minor protest from Angeal, Crisis Core does show that there's this level of reciprocation on his part towards Zack. And there's a couple of scenes over the course of the game where the action sort of like stops and the characters linger in the moment in ways that feel really poignant. One of these happens during the Wutai mission when Angeal rescues Zack. And this scene ends up being like a frequent callback whenever Zack thinks about Angeal. Anyway, I will do my best to tell you what the clip was about. It is Angeal rescuing Zack from a pair of monsters, and then afterwards, like Zack's like, "Oh, I'm sorry if your like sword got any wear, tear, or rust," and then Angeal's like, "But you're a little more important than my sword, but just a little." And then there's a very significant handhold that happens. So there you go. That's my best description about what just happened in that scene. Anyway, Fate and theoretical drama of Crisis Core end up pulling Zack and Angeal apart. Angeal tries to talk sense into his childhood friend Genesis, who is defected from and actively rebelling against Shinra. And Angeal's discovery of his status as one of Shinra's experiments puts a further divide between him and Zack, and leaves like Angeal wavering on his best course of action. He does assist Zack several times over the course of the story, and continues to share his advice and ideals. But at the end of Angeal's storyline, he transforms into a monster, and Zack is forced to kill him. And the game lingers a bit on this scene. There's this like slowness to let the moment sink. This back-to-back pacing going from Angeal's death. Actually, here, I'm going to put on the Zack music. Angeal's death to like Aerith comforting Zack in the church really solidifies how important they both are to him. And this event leaves this sort of like empty space in Zack's heart and marks this tonal shift in his character, where he becomes a good deal more serious than he was before, but not without shades of his more puppy-like affectionate personality. You can catch that by talking to some of the NPCs around Midgar. For things like Zack can declare himself to be Midgar's #1 hottie. And even though we're sort of mainly focused on the relationships he has with like Angeal and Aerith and Cloud, you do also have the option for Zack to declare his affections for his close friend Kunsel before you leave for Nibelheim. Which, if you do, Kunsel is very touched by the gesture, but he waves it off to insist that Zack go spend his remaining time in Midgar with Aerith. And like everyone involved, like in the Nibelheim incident, Zack's life takes a turn for the worse during it. But not due to being broken by the devastation, but also from having his trust in Sephiroth broken. We're going to talk about the relationship between Zack and Sephiroth more later. When time finally catches back up with we might see if I have to take a break to see if I can fix some things, but we're going to see what we can do real quick and hope that the YouTube issue kind of resolves itself later. But anyway, when time finally catches back up with Zack as he breaks like both himself and Cloud out of the hidden lab in Nibelheim, he finds that he's now like wanted by Shinra, and this puts him at odds with former allies. Still, he's determined to return to Midgar with Cloud. Like, no matter how much Cloud slows him down, he always like protects Cloud. And during his travels, Cloud is comatose from Mako poisoning, but Zack continues to care for him, like throughout like this entire journey. And this is something that gets, universally depicted in the compilation. I wouldn't do that to you. I won't do a thing like abandon you. I won't leave you hanging like that. We're friends, right? And that line, we're friends, right? Tomodachi daro ends up like becoming like one of Zack's like signature lines. And just protecting Cloud until the very, very end. Just a small note before we move on to the next section. But one of the changes that was made in Crisis Core Reunion happens when Zack visits Gongaga while on the run. Sizne, one of the Turks who Zack befriended, mentions speaking with Zack's mother. In the original version, Sizne brings up his mother's concern that he won't be able to find a wife. But in Crisis Core Reunion, she instead talks about you won't be able to find someone to marry. This change is unique to the English localization, and it's a really interesting change to portray in the world of FF7 as, one, possibly having marriage equality, and two, Zack would be nonchalant about the gender of any prospective spouses. The word for friend used in Japanese, like I said, is tomodachi. It's like, that's like the line, tomodachi daro. Alright, so we're going to talk about the ending of Crisis Core.
Is this where we get the spoilers?
I kind of already spoiled you for this ending earlier, but we're going to have, like, more spoilers. So, Zack's life comes to, like, this very dramatic end just outside of Midgar. He's forced to take on the Shinra army in order to protect Cloud. And what follows is this unwinnable boss fight against the army. And woven into it is one of my favorite examples of gameplay and story integration. Throughout the game, you've had the digital mind wave, the DMW, running during battle. This is this sort of virtual slot machine that depicts those close to Zack and provides like buffs and limit breaks and level ups, along with these little glimpses into additional memories about all of them. Okay. Sorry folks. I apologize. When did that kick in? Because I have to probably go back a bit, because people are saying that YouTube was very loud.
It was right around here.
Okay, I will repeat then. I'm sorry for the curse. I really am, because now I have to figure out like how to fix it. Okay, there we go. Okay. I fixed it. Anyway, we were talking about how the digital mind wave glitches out. And, like, the last three to glitch out are Angel, Cloud, and Aerith. Let me get the music going again. But anyway, at the very end, with the very, very last of his strength, Zack encourages Cloud, who's just on the edges of regaining his consciousness, to live for the both of them, carrying on his dreams and honor as Zack's living legacy. And so we get this glimpse, that's sort of like the line, my honor, my dreams, like they're yours now, you're my living legacy. And we get this sort of like glimpse of Cloud, like at his like absolute like softest and most vulnerable. And that's like what you get just before everything gets walled off and repressed. And the final sequence has Zack thinking about Aerith, but at the same time, Angel is the one, with that sort of same handhold that you had to trust me about really is significant. Angel like leads him to rest in the life stream. And the very, very last line of the game is Zack, asking, did he become a hero? Like asking Aerith, asking the audience that. And, he did. And it wasn't in the flashy way he thought it would happen. It's not in the glory that Genesis sought, in the limelight cast upon Sephiroth. He became a hero in the selfless sacrifice that he made in the middle of nowhere for someone who only mattered to him. And we kind of did this section with screen caps because, 1, it is very long. 2, there is a chance you will get a copyright strike on the VOD for the song Why that plays behind it. And 3, I can't watch that ending without getting all choked up, so this is like literally the only way I can talk about it.
No crying today.
No crying today. Okay, we're gonna hope that YouTube is now working. Because I wanted to play something specific. So hopefully YouTube is back and working in my slides, but not in other tabs. So one of the main themes that plays during the previous sequence, during that unwinnable battle, is called The Price of Freedom. In 2014, it was given a sort of like official lyrical version by Crisis Core's composer Takaharu Ishimoto. And this very much reads as like a love song between Cloud and Zack. I'm going to play like the last like 90 seconds of it just to give you an idea of what I mean. Hopefully, and we're going to hope that this works. Yes. It's fine. We got there. Hooray. Anyway, do you want to talk about some queer ladies now?
Sure.
Let's talk about some queer ladies. Fabulous. Right, we're talking about Aerith and Tifa and welding the love triangle hypotenuse. So, while the original game depicts some mild tension between the two, the remake really instead allows for further intimacy between the pair, to the point that they often act like in the love interest role to each other, especially in light of Cloud's emotional issues. And we're going to be discussing their relationship in tandem. Like I said, the original game is kind of famous for setting up Aerith and Tifa on two ends of a love triangle with Cloud, and to the extent the player. And both of them, they do love Cloud in their own ways, and they're both very important people in his life. But while the original game had this sort of tension between the two of them in regards to this gameplay reinforced competition via those secret affection scores that shift over the course of the playthrough that decide who will date Cloud at the Golden Saucer, the remake instead gives their relationship more room to breathe and to blossom, to the point where there are plenty of scenes where they take turns in the love interest role to each other, offering each other the type of emotional support that at this point in the story, Cloud is incapable to offer them due to his issues regarding his stunted emotional maturity. Actually, I'm going to go back to Aerith's theme for just a bit while we talk about Aerith. So we're going to take a step back. We're going to talk about Aerith, in particular, and then we're going to go deeper into her relationship with Tifa. I kind of glossed over this while talking about Wall Market earlier. But there are these hints that Aerith is, 1, familiar with Wall Market and its queer subculture, and 2, is aware that Cloud is closeted, even if he hasn't realized it himself. As noted in the original game, she's the one who talks to the dressmaker about making the outfit for Cloud, and does so in a way that makes Cloud question exactly what she thinks of him. Both the original game and the remake hint that Aerith is aware that the mercenary persona Cloud puts on is hiding his real self. And the remake, on top of all that, strongly suggests that Aerith has foreknowledge of events to come. So it's not out of the question that she's able to notice immediately that Cloud is closeted. She also instantly recognizes the beautiful bro when you enter the gym in the original game. So that kind of indicates that she has some level of familiarity with the local queer community. And this trend is carried forward into the remake, as Aerith is the one, who kind of, comes up with the idea that we're going to meet with Andrea. And, we're going to put on a dress. And Cloud, this is the plan. You got to learn to love it. And we saw some glimpses of this during the performance, but for a fuller picture, during the Honeybee Inn sequence, Aerith sneaks in, and then takes the seat that Cloud had. So she is surrounding herself with cute girls in the middle of all of this. And then she cheers him on the loudest during the show, provided that you're doing well as the player. And she's just delighted to get the chance to not only attend a show at the Honeybee Inn, and but also to see Cloud's whole transformation sequence. She doesn't shy away from offering her her commentary on the whole thing. Even if Cloud is kind of embarrassed, she's just but you're so pretty. I love that line. That line's so cute. And then when, she finally does meet Tifa, like, Aerith just, like, instantly lights up. She runs over and greets Tifa like, we are now besties, Tifa! Like, no, like, hesitation whatsoever. And their immediate, like, teamwork and chemistry as they take out Don Corneo's, lackeys, like, it ends on this perfect, like, little, like, high five. And this is, like, this callback that we had to earlier in the game where Aerith and Cloud are trying to work together, and Cloud is just, like, struggling to high five her. And, like, just like the instant Aerith Tifa high five is very on point. Alright, so we're going to hope that YouTube is going to be good with us. So, we're going to take a little bit of a look at how Aerith and Tifa's relationship develops over the course of the remake. But this is like a really good place to start, is the scene in the sewers where Aerith makes use of the same date offer that she made on Cloud, which she picked up from Zack, mind you, but she uses it on Tifa, so hopefully this will play okay.
Focus. Still thinking about the plate? Yeah. The future isn't set in stone. That's what I always tell myself. Yeah? I hope you're right. How about this then? Think of something fun. After saving Sector 7, you're gonna... I'm gonna... go shopping. Topside. I'll buy stuff for the bar. Decorations, coasters. Can I come? You'd better. Then it's a date. Cloud can carry all our stuff. He'll be our pack chocobo.
What was that about me?
Nothing.
See, that's how you ask a girl out on a date. Clearly. But following the rest of the game, like, Tifa and Aerith's relationship continues to blossom as they encourage and support and protect and save each other with roughly the same frequency that Cloud does for either of them, or that either of them do for Cloud. It gives this, like, impression, like I said, like, we're taking this, like, original love triangle that existed, and we're welding in a new beam that connects Aerith and Tifa together with an affection that's really on par for what they may feel for Cloud. Like, right after the scene we watched, like, Aerith pulls Tifa safely across a crumbling bridge, and then both of them work together to save Cloud. And then a little bit later, Tifa is the one to catch Aerith when she falls across, like, another bridge. And at the end of the sewer, Tifa pulls Aerith aside, and the two of them have to solve, like, the last puzzle in the area. During their time in the train graveyard, Aerith's, like, natural ability to sense and commune with spirits makes her less afraid of the ghosts that are there. And she, like, physically puts herself between Tifa and, like, the ghoul that boss battle. And then when Aerith becomes trapped in Eligor's Black Wind and sort of, like, lost in her own memories and trauma, while Cloud is the one who physically defends her from the ghost, Tifa is the one who gives her, like, the emotional reassurances after Aerith is, like, so clearly shaken. And when they reach the outskirts of Sector 7, Aerith is the one who, like, stands by Tifa's side as they see that the defense of the pillar is already underway. And when Tifa, like, chooses, like, to fight to defend the pillar, Aerith is very quick to promise that she'll find Marlene and she'll keep Marlene safe. Later on, during the rescue of Aerith in the Shinra building, when you have, like, the sort of scene where the whispers are encircling Aerith, it's Tifa who pulls her to safety. Also, this is like the same scene. I just really like the shot from this angle. And finally, in one of the remakes sort of like ending sequences, the drum, Aerith and Tifa are paired together to explore the area together. And so all of this like really helps, you know, to kind of like link the two of them together. Though, you know, there's also like some sad aspects of this as well. There's like two like really small but sad, poignant points from the original game and the novels that I'd like to sort of touch on. One thing I don't think gets mentioned like very often is that, you know, all of the characters in the original game have unique reactions to Aerith's death. And Tifa's is probably one of the tenderest of them all. She's the only one, other than Cloud, that actually like touches Aerith. And she does so with this really like gentle caress of her face before like she runs off crying. She can't like look or face anyone right then. And then there's this sort of concept of Tifa having like a deep sorrow over losing Aerith that gets revisited like in the novels, particularly in On the Way to a Smile, where the group visits Aerith's resting place after Sephiroth's defeat. Let me actually swap this to like a sadder song. Together, they all went to visit Aerith, laid to rest in the deep, clear spring at the Forgotten City. The world she had given her life to save was okay now. That was what Tifa told her. And then she heard someone asking, "What about you? Are you okay?" Was it Aerith's voice or her own? She couldn't tell, and she started to cry. She hadn't gotten the chance to mourn when Sephiroth killed Aerith. Whatever sorrow she felt quickly turned to anger and hatred for their enemy. But now, coming to this place again, the unfiltered sorrow drove deep. Stricken, she realized, I did this too. The things I did with Avalanche made many people feel like I do now. She sobbed harder. The tears wouldn't stop. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. But I don't want to end this section on such a really sad note. So I wanted to include a few words from Tifa and Aerith's remake voice actresses on the relationship between the two of them and the love that they share. And, you know, you obviously can see that as platonic. That's fine. But it's very easy to read these two as so much more. So from Britt Barron, Tifa's voice actress, early on it was very clear that Tifa and Aerith are two strong women that work together and fight alongside each other and care about each other. And then from Brianna White, Aerith's voice actress, one of the things that's true in so many good Final Fantasy games is the connection between the characters. And you really see it. I've seen it in FF14 and FF15, but there's something about the way Final Fantasy makes a character that makes you fall in love with them. But they also fall in love with each other, and they have special bonds with each other. They're trying to save the planet. Why wouldn't they love each other and work together, you know? Sad feelings about queer ladies. But also good feelings, I would hope.
I also like to think that for the remake, they actually studied women's relationships versus have to fight over man.
Yeah, I think, like I said, I think a lot of it that is helpful is that the way their relationship starts is literally like Aerith being like, no, we're saving Tifa. And then, like, as soon as they meet, she's just like, Tifa, you are my bestie now. Like, she doesn't directly say that, but, like, the way she treats Tifa is very much like, this is my bestie. I'm so happy I get to finally meet you. Which, like I said, there is this sort of feeling that Aerith kind of knows what's coming and sort of has been, like, anticipating when this would happen. And so she finally gets to meet Tifa. She is like ecstatic about it. She's like, yes, bestie! Anyway, that's how I interpret it. I didn't get a chance to include this because, again, I haven't had a chance to read Traces of Two Past, but I did see an excerpt from it, which is basically Aerith being like, oh my god, Tifa is like the best. She is so like sweet and smart and kind and strong and beautiful. And I'm like, Aerith, you got yourself a crush, my girl. Anyway, I'm going to take... It's not like an actual momentary pause, but it's a little bit of a momentary pause. So, for the next section, we're going to be talking a little bit about the Turks, and then we're going to get really in-depth with Sephiroth. And I'm aware that there are people who get uncomfortable with queer-coded antagonists. You know, for a very long time, villains and tragic figures were the only ones you would encounter, you know, like you would encounter as queer characters in pop culture. And that was due to unfair dictates from like the Hays Code and the Comics Code Authority that left this sort of decades-long mark on queer representation. And, you know, it's absolutely fair and valid to be disappointed in past and current issues with queer representation in pop culture. But, on the other hand, there are many queer people who find queer-coded antagonists to be fascinating and, like, are happy to reclaim them as their own and read new meanings into their stories of defiance. So with that in mind, we're going to have a discussion about the relationship between Reno and Rude. We're going to have like a few like extra like bonus little clips, and then we're going to get really in depth with Sephiroth as a queer character, both before and after the Nibelheim incident, since there's a lot of evidence and material there for a queer reading. Alright. So, Reno and Rude, partners in multiple senses. So while Reno and Rude start off as reoccurring, you know, side characters and like mini bosses, their close complementary relationship has been fleshed out over the course of the compilation into something that can be read as more than merely co-workers. And something that might surprise people is that Reno and Rude have been a part of the fabric of FF7 since some of the earliest iterations of the game. You know, there are like design documents like from like the earliest that we have that, you know, include them. Though originally their names were swapped, so originally Reno was Rude and Rude was Reno, which I always thought was really amusing. But they've always been on the opposite side of the protagonist, acting as enforcers for Shinra. So while their initial characterization had just enough personality to make them memorable, you know, they had that sort of contrast between their on-the-job ruthless efficiency and their off-the-clock laid-back attitudes. You know, that's a really striking kind of thing. The expanded space of the compilation has brought them more into focus and allowed for a better appreciation of their relationship. And given their closeness and familiarity, it's just as easy to read their partnership as something beyond like just co-workers. So the first point to address is how Reno and Rude's relationship is defined within FF7. This has been fairly consistently been as partners. Textually, that's, the same sense of, say, like a pair of detectives who work together. The specific Japanese term used is aibo, which has the same connotation of like a tight-knit working relationship. And we haven't really brought up the whole existence of official relationship charts before, but this is a good place for it, and you can see that Reno and Rude are linked by the term partner in both languages. I will point out, though, that for the lower one, from the FF Ultimania Archive Volume 2, in that series of books, red lines between characters are specifically reserved for close emotional bonds, which can include, like, best friends, family members, and lovers. But for like a really specific example of their closeness, we're going to talk a little bit about Before Crisis, Shoutouts to the wonderful Grimoire Valentine, who did a whole bunch of archival work, making it so that way, even if you can't play Before Crisis, you can still watch all of it, and in English. So we're talking about Chapter 6 of Before Crisis, which is the holiday episode of all things.
They have a holiday episode?
There is a holiday episode of Before Crisis. In it, Reno becomes curious because Rude has been, going on these sort of uncharacteristic evening outings, and he requests that the player character, in this case, Shotgun Turk, all the Before Crisis player characters are referred to by their weapons as a shorthand for them. So he asks that Shotgun helps him investigate. So the player goes and finds Rude on a date with a woman named Chelsea, and the player character immediately wants to back off and just kind of leave them alone. However, Reno persists in continuing to investigate what's happening. He takes over trailing Rude, on these dates, and even comments about Rude being shy around Chelsea. It's kind of cute, actually. It's this interesting kind of interplay of is Reno really jealous, or is he cool with this? But while Reno is trailing Rude, they also find out that Chelsea is actually a spy for Avalanche, and she's been stringing Rude along in order to gain access to information. So Reno and the player character confront Chelsea on this, and Chelsea reveals that she's sort of had this change of heart and no longer wishes to hurt Rude. But she can't really bring herself to face that shame of what she's done. So she tells the player character, please tell Rude, that I'm calling it all off. And so the player character finds Rude standing beside what is not called a Christmas tree. It is a holiday tree. But she finds him beside the annual holiday tree where he and Chelsea had agreed to meet up. As a bonus, I appreciate Shotgun saying that she would have gone after a woman like Chelsea. Heck yeah, bonus lesbian content. But in the end, the person who meets Rude in front of the tree, which should be noted, is meant to symbolize undying love, is Reno. And then Reno invites Rude to come home with him.
Oh. Oh my.
Oh yeah. So, just a little, fellas, is it gay to ask your partner to come home with you? But there's other gestures as well that underscore the closeness between them. In the novel On the Way to a Smile, there's a scene where Reno and Rude originally planned to try to ride out the meteor fall from the relative safety inside the Shinra building. But instead, Reno insists that they have one last thrill, and they go and watch meteor fall together. And they do end up surviving the event. But there's this real interesting poignancy that Reno and Rude are able to face the literal end of the world head on so long as they are together. And this camaraderie carries over into the remake. And it's very clear, you have their joint boss fight at the Sector 7 pillar. Reno has this moment of doubt and loss when Rude's helicopter crashes. And likewise, Rude makes sure to carry Reno to safety after the fight, when they only have maybe 5 minutes to escape. And all this is sort of part and parcel to this trend of occasionally offering these humanizing moments to members of Shinra in order to contrast with their skewed morality, which, Before Crisis and the novels and the remake all, take a turn at doing. Also, this is just for fun and a showcase of gameplay and story integration. But if you manage to cast Sleep on Rude, he mumbles Reno's name in his sleep.
Reno.
I know it's like quiet here, but I promise you it's there. And that, by the way, is true in both languages. Though he calls Reno Aibo in the Japanese version. So I thought that was actually pretty funny and really cute.
Don't dream about your job, y'all.
Don't dream about your job. Hello? Google Slides? Okay, there we go. Alright. I also wanted to do like a full analysis of Song and Rufus's relationship, but I didn't have time for that because a lot of that stuff is in the novels currently. You know, and there's a whole lot of like interplay of like Sung's loyalty to the company and to Rufus himself against, you know, sort of like Rufus's particular brand of authority. But I do have 30 seconds of pure vibes.
Everybody likes vibes.
I like the vibes of the scene.
Mr. Vice President.
Mr. President. That's right.
Vibes. Though, speaking of vibes... Oh, come on. There we go. Speaking of vibes, one of the new characters introduced in the remake is Roche. We're going to just enjoy a solid minute of Roche being his very dramatic self while pining over Cloud. And I feel that this is a clip that speaks for itself. So thank you very much, Austin Lee Matthews, for all of this.
I'm waiting, my friend! Come out, wherever you are! Why, hello there! Forgive me for saying, but you remind me of a dear friend of mine. Perhaps you've met him?
I don't know. Is he Shinra too?
Perhaps. My name is Roche, by the way. Ordinarily, your ill-concealed hostility and exotic wardrobe would give me pause. But not today, for I am here on business of a personal nature. Looking for my aforementioned friend.
What's his name?
Oh, I only wish I knew. But I can tell you that he has a real need for speed, as they say. And while he boasts a very large sword, his first love is plainly his mount.
Yeah, he sounds great. Say, is that Fort Condor I see over there? You play?
I'm always ready for a round of Fort Condor! Though, I suspect a delicate flower like you would wither if exposed to my scorching passion for the game. Maybe after some practice,
Roche is one of those characters, when you first encounter him, you're just like, what is this? What is up with this dude? And then eventually you're just like, oh, I see. He's just a disaster bisexual. It's fine. And I say this as a disaster bisexual. But anyway, I think it's time for what everyone was kind of like expecting from this panel. Oh, no, hello? Google Slides, please. Yes, it is time. Wait, I have to make sure that I am fully ready for all of this. Hold on. Oh yeah, there we go.
I can't hear the music, but I'm assuming we've just started the Sephiroth theme.
No, it's actually the Shinra theme. No, the change is that I now have a Sephiroth plushie next to my ping tuber.
Oh, there, I see it.
Hello. It's one of the ones that I own. I own so much Sephiroth merch, y'all. I haven't counted in a while. But anyway, it's time to talk about Sephiroth. So Sephiroth, the bleeding edge of queer subtext and shifting identities. While reading Sephiroth is queer, down to his character design is easy. Defining the exact boundaries is complicated given how it overlaps with his otherworldly nature. Still, even with Shark, stark shifts in characterization, his queerness is always apparent. So discussing Sephiroth's queerness, like I said, is very inherently complex, and it's kind of a messy affair because we're dealing with who he is before and after the Nibelheim incident, as well as the interactions with his otherworldly nature at the same time, which, like I said, complicates things. Still, in most of his appearances in the compilation, queer readings are never far from the surface. And we're going to start by talking about character design, actually. We sort of only discussed that in passing so far, but Sephiroth is an interesting character to do a queer character design reading on. Original character designer Tetsuya Nomura has commented that, "My concept for Sephiroth from the beginning was that everything about him would be cool. His battle movements, and his in-game scenes too." Additionally, Sephiroth was designed to contrast with Cloud, with long silver hair to, as compared to bright, blonde spikes, and this dark, dramatic outfit compared to Cloud's more practical one. And it's an outfit that rides that very thin line between, military wear and leather kink. Especially with the combination of exposed skin and his signature harness, all of which are very sexy decisions by Tetsuya Nomura. And then, when we start updating his design to HD, the Advent Children co-director Takashi Nozue noted in the Advent Children reunion files, "We were told to preserve his alluring qualities at all cost. So we ended up giving him a seductive charm and a face you would never see in real life." But also, for Sephiroth, it's important to talk about his background. So we don't really know too much in detail about his early life, though we can infer a decent amount. He was more than likely raised as a ward of the Shinra Science Department, and was given really sparse and deceptive information about his heritage. At a young age, approximately 14 to 15, he was drafted into the Wutai War as Shinra sought to test and then replicate the results of the Genova project to create Soldier. He quickly rose to prominence as a war hero, and then became close friends with his fellow first-class soldiers, Angel and Genesis. Throughout the compilation, Sephiroth is depicted as exclusively homosocial in his relationships, which, is part and parcel with his military status, but also means that the only moments of tenderness we see to him are out of affection that he has for his fellow soldiers, all of which are male. And his relationship with Genesis and Angel is really complex, and due to our limited perspective in Crisis Core, it's difficult to really know all the particulars. We know the basics, that Genesis and Jill, who are also both born of the Genova project under Project G, and were raised outside of Shinra, in quotation marks, in the village of Benora, though the whole time they were under Shinra surveillance. These two were childhood friends, despite their different socioeconomic backgrounds. Genesis is the one who pushes them to join Soldier, in part because Genesis wants to befriend Sephiroth. There's even a whole thing in Crisis Core where Genesis, when he was younger, figured out how to can Benora white apple juice specifically to get Sephiroth's attention. And the three of them end up at the highest echelon of the organization as the strongest first-class soldiers. However, after what should be a playful duel between them leaves Genesis injured and sort of sets off this process of physical degradation, that then leads Genesis and numerous other soldiers to defect and instead, turn against Shinra. Sephiroth takes both Genesis's original defection and Angel's choice to leave as these major acts of rejection and betrayal. But even so, he still goes out of his way not to directly fight with either of them. He refuses missions that would put him into conflict with them, and even works with Zack to sabotage Shinra's efforts to eliminate Angeal and Genesis. But in the end, both the loss of Angeal and Genesis's antagonistic manipulations end up being crucial components of Sephiroth's eventual rejection of humanity. Just as a side note, I'm really looking forward to how Ever Crisis is going to like further flesh out like stuff about like this like particular like set of relationships. We're gonna take a little step back though, because there's a moment to discuss kind of in the middle of all this. That's the example of reading like a real-world queer issue into Final Fantasy VII. As I mentioned, you know, we had this sort of dramatic duel between Sephiroth and Genesis that sort of marks this turning point in their relationship. You know, one of increasing like jealousy and antagonism on Genesis's part. Where Genesis's injuries are worse than expected. And so both Sephiroth and Angeal go to seek more information in the infirmary. All right, thank you everybody for being super duper kind and patient. We have now switched over to Crisis Core Reunion because I could get that video file to play. So anyway, we're going to, just to catch you back up, this is a scene that happens in the infirmary in Shinra.
The man who treated him was Hollander.
Professor Hollander, how is Genesis?
The problem is the Mako energy that seeped in through the wound.
Is it treatable?
First, he'll need a transfusion. You aren't viable.
Why couldn't I be the donor? A soldier.
I'm going to pause it right there because we kind of got to the end of what we needed. So in stories, Sephiroth is rejected from donating blood due to his particular Genova-influenced DNA makeup being assumed to be non-compatible with Genesis's. But it's really not that hard to read this scene as the type of medical discrimination that many queer people face. You know, for cultural context, you know, Japan has a 6-month deferral period on blood donations from men who have sex with men. So it's kind of it's an interesting kind of allegory there. Give me one second, I have to make sure that on. But we also talk a little bit about Sephiroth's relationship with Zack. You know, Zack kind of has this, like, you know, ability to very easily, you know, make friends with just about anyone. And one of the real highlights of Crisis Core is watching how Zack and Sephiroth, like, become these sort of, like unlikely friends. It's actually really sweet. And the scene where Sephiroth has literally gone out of his way to meet with Zack and Junon is actually like kind of like a really like tender one.
Mission failed. This goes on your permanent record.
Huh? Sephiroth? Long time no see.
Let the Turks take care of the rest. I was on my way to Modeoheim, but I heard you were in the area.
Lucky me.
The situation has not resolved. Genesis copies have been sighted around the world.
That can't be. We wiped out those Genesis copies.
Did Genesis really die? They've been sighted in Midgar as well.
I see.
The slums, too. Permission to return. Granted.
Yeah.
Take care.
You too. Hey, what's going on in Modeo-heim?
The device Hollander was using has been stolen.
Genesis?
Probably. We'll meet again soon.
I'll hold you to that.
Anyway, there's just a lot of Crisis Core that's just like, Sephiroth actually really did care about his friends a whole lot, y'all. And, you know, then it all gets ruined. So let's talk about how it all gets ruined. Oh, I like that nice, like, dong, like, you know, like, the nice, like, hard sound there. That was good. So all of this comes to a sharp halt once we reach the Nibelheim incident. After an investigation, I'm sorry, NBZ, of, the Nibelheim Mako reactor leads Sephiroth to start questioning his humanity, and he spends like 7 sleepless nights studying the research materials abandoned by Professor Gast. Well, in the original game, the Nibelheim incident seems to, you know, have like this sort of striking of a match. Crisis Core takes the time to show us that it was this sort of slow stacking of kindling that preceded it, you know. Sephiroth spending like the last 2 years of his life being betrayed and abandoned and used. This becomes such a sharp change in personality that we have like these arc words of like, you are not the Sephiroth like I once knew. And this carries across like multiple pieces of media. The incident comes to a close when Cloud is able to mortally wound Sephiroth via stabbing him in the back with the Buster Sword, and then managing to use the last of his strength after being stabbed by Sephiroth with the Masamune in kind to toss Sephiroth into the Mako pool at the bottom of the reactor. You know, I've mentioned how the lives of all the characters who are in the Nibelheim incident, you know, can be bisected along that line. And Sephiroth's the one where I mean that very literally. So what happens after Sephiroth's physical death is a little hazy. We know his spirit spent 5 years in the life stream before being able to find a way back to the corporeal world via his connection with Genova's physical body. During FF7, the two of them work in tandem to the point where it becomes really difficult to draw a dividing line between the two because of how tightly they are entwined. After this return, the personality shift that started in Nibelheim takes an additional step forward in the Japanese version. And it's pretty significant, so we're going to take a moment to talk about first-person pronoun usage in Japanese. Now just know this is a very quick commentary. It doesn't go into all the subtleties of Japanese grammar, especially when we're dealing with a piece of fiction, which has different rules as compared to conversational Japanese. But the devs have noted that this is significant, so we're going to talk about it. Up until his death, Sephiroth uses the pronoun ore, which carries this very strong masculine connotation. And, you know, it fits with his background as a soldier in an all-male military unit. Like, of note, all first-class soldiers use ore as their first-person pronoun. After his return, when he's essentially speaking through Genova's body, Sephiroth switches almost exclusively to watashi, which is instead a far more formal and gender-neutral pronoun. He also does use ware, which is used for speaking, like, for a group. Having a shift in pronouns like this is rare to see in Final Fantasy games, so it becomes a part of his characterization. Like, it sort of, like, distances himself from his past persona and presents himself as above others, and it might possibly also mark a shift in identity. We do hear about this personal shift in identity in the novel On the Way to a Smile, which includes the only section of FF7 canon narrated from Sephiroth's perspective. He specifically divides his life into before and after knowing his true self. And there's this sort of strong suggestion in the novel that using he/him pronouns for Sephiroth is more of like a shorthand signifier than a reflection of his current gender identity, since his name is never used in the novel. The closest indication we have to any possible regard to gender is like the commentary Sephiroth has that after like dying and being able to just be a spiritual existence, he sees physical bodies as unbearably confined. So there is some complications to this, with this like sort of reintroduction of ore into his vocabulary in FF7 Remake, as well as in the latest FF7 Rebirth trailer. Now again, Japanese first-person pronouns do, they have this, gendered connotation, but they also can convey like different levels of familiarity. So we'll have to just sort of like wait and see like if they're, what the exact significance is on Sephiroth occasionally switching to using ore. But while we're talking about pronouns, I'm going to touch very briefly on how Jenova has been referred to by a variety of pronouns, depending upon both the speaker and the version of the game. Of note is how, in the scenes of Ifalna explain Jenova's history. In the original PS1 translation, she uses he/him pronouns for Jenova, which is a choice that's exclusive to that scene. Later translations, she uses its pronouns instead. So I've taken that to kind of indicate that the original version with the he/him pronouns might have been just like a mistranslation. In the Japanese version, no gendered pronouns are used in reference to Jenova in this scene. Ifalna just uses the term, sono mono, like that one, the one. And additionally in the novel, Sephiroth's remnant Kadaj is also referred to with varying pronouns, usually he/him or its. Though the second one is more in context to signifying when Kadaj kind of falls into the uncanny valley and other characters are really unnerved or terrified of him. So there's a lot of references to Kadaj as like the creature who looks like a boy, or like the doppelganger kind of language. And obviously there's a whole conversation to have here about the ups and downs of like non-human, non-binary characters in general, and shapeshifters in particular, but that's outside of the scope of this panel, which is already a pretty wide scope. But back to the main discussion. So even while acting through a corporeal body during the original game, Sephiroth, mainly uses his default appearance out of convenience and familiarity, along with using Cloud's memories as an anchor. So to me, this is actually a pretty important point, because it means that usually anytime we see Sephiroth outside of prequel media like Crisis Core or Ever Crisis, we're sort of like seeing Cloud's memories and perceptions of Sephiroth being reflected back at him. But Sephiroth is able to reshape his appearance, fully. That's totally within his capabilities, as seen by when he temporarily takes on Tifa's appearance at the Northern Crater. And going back to the note about like bisection, that comes back not only when we see what remains of Sephiroth's physical body, but also his two boss forms, neither of which have like legs or hips in any sort of standard configuration. So while, strange and surprising boss transformations are common with Final Fantasy villains, there's definitely some reason, behind, Sephiroth with his. So, I'm gonna just... I want to switch up the music for just a second. go. I will turn it down slightly because I know One Winged Angel is loud. Especially this version. In the original game, Sephiroth only appears sporadically, having 7 scenes in total, one of which is completely optional, and is not seen directly until the Nibelheim flashback in Calm outside of Midgard. The dev team has sort of likened this to like this slow drawing out of his appearances, kind of like the shark in Jaws. Like, his presence was overarching throughout the game, even if he's not like physically on screen. This concept was carried over to the movie Advent Children, where Sephiroth makes a few fleeting appearances early on before making his main appearance solely at the story's climax. And while he did manipulate Cloud to his own ends in the original game, as we talked back in Cloud's section, there are plenty of times where he gives Cloud almost no attention outside of his plans. But starting with Advent Children, the lead writer Nojima noticed like this shift in characterization in the reunion files, that he is all the more hell-bent on getting his revenge. Sephiroth is so focused on Cloud that he doesn't care what else is going on around him. And this plays into the On the Way to the Smile novel, which has like a lot of lines centered around this like obsession. I'm just going to note that like On the Way to the Smile takes place before Advent Children, but the novel itself was released after the movie. So you have lines, you know, like, he made his decision. Cloud would become the nucleus of the core of his consciousness. He yearned to tell Cloud this. I have not forgotten you. You are still in my mind. You do not know this, but soon you will. Cloud would notice the spread of geostigma, he was sure, and then he would never disappear. So long as Cloud remembers me, I will always exist. I want Cloud to know this is my doing. I want them all to know. He would need a body. There were things he had to say with his own human voice, things he had to tear apart with his own hands. Even if I am incomplete, it matters not. Cloud will be there. Cloud will complete me. Alright, we have like another clip. By my wonderful A-team, how you all doing? I know we're still going.
We're good.
We're good?
We're good.
Good, cool. Anyway, time to watch a bunch of things burn. So flashing warning for this video.
It couldn't be. But then...
Schala, did you mute yourself again?
I did mute myself again, thank you. Thank you, Allie. Allie's got my back here. I was saying, unlike most of the characters who snap back to their original characterizations during the remake, Sephiroth noticeably does not. This sort of stands out enough to be considered a hint about the overarching plotlines of the remake. Additionally, given the cinematic nature of the game, there's a lot of choices that are made with the cinematography and the dialogue that take what might have been subtext and make it really plainly textual. There's a lot to cover, so we kind of had like that scene there where, you know, there are choices that were made about, you know, having, for example, Sephiroth's introduction in the fire, where he turns towards Cloud, as sort of this inversion of like the most famous Sephiroth scene where he looks at the camera and then turns away and walks into the fire. And then, you know, having Cloud like literally like just walk almost into Sephiroth's bare chest and then look up to his lips. Choices that were made. Choices. We're gonna have some screenshot time. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff in the remake where like Sephiroth will do stuff like in this scene where he's sort of like swapping back and forth between bringing up Nibelheim in like this really like sharply cruel detail, but then almost thinking about it really like fondly. And there's a lot of like close-ups like this, focusing on Sephiroth's lips as he speaks. Other characters do occasionally get shot this way, but Sephiroth gets this more often than like a lot of others. And even when Sephiroth isn't physically present, there are still scenes where we have like his voice heard, like this one just before, like during like the night before the raid on Mako Reactor 5, where it's just like, you know, like the sleep and dream the sweetest dreams. Like that's the, you know, that just creeping on your, you know, your designated rival just a little bit. And then there's like this whole like thing, which happens during after Cloud like almost dies, falling from Mako Reactor 5, and we have this sort of like scene inside Cloud's head that Sephiroth like intrudes upon. And when like Cloud asks like, "Who are you?" like Sephiroth's answer is like, "I am your everything." Which in Japanese is like, you know, "Watashi wa omae no shushin da," I believe is like the correct way. Hopefully my pronunciation was okay. But it's like, "I am your master." Like, either way you're doing that line is like, there, like you kind of can't get around like the textual implications of it either way. I know that master is like sort of like a reference to like the Master Sephiroth like lines you'd have like from the Sephiroth copies in the original game, but still, it is a choice that was made. There's also like a number of times when Sephiroth like in his scenes will touch Cloud, and he tends to touch Cloud on his shoulder. In FF7 Remake, all the Sephiroth clones have their number tattoos on their shoulder. So it feels like this is, you know, this sort of like possessive touch over where Cloud should have his Sephiroth copy number. And again, we have like these sort of very close shots that like key you in on like Sephiroth's like micro expressions as he like does like all this different taunting. Just a little extra context on this scene, like the Don't Deny Me. This is during the raid on Shinra Tower. A few scenes back, Cloud does temporarily give in to Sephiroth and Jenova's influence and is drawn towards the elevator leading to Jenova's chamber. This is actually really well done from a gameplay and story integration perspective, because no matter which direction you input on your controller, Cloud will continue walking forward to the elevator. And I love that you can't stop him. He will just keep walking forward with every button you press. Also, anyway, I don't think they're like hiding it at this point.
Unless y'all missed all the subtle signs.
Yes, all the subtle signs. Also, I just like this one line from Barrett where he's just like, "Hey, get your man." It's like, Barrett? Phrasing. And then we sort of have like the invitation to the boss fight with Sephiroth like at the end of the game. Which is like, that fight itself is pretty interesting. Again, there's more like really interesting gameplay and story integration here. Sephiroth actually has two different sets of lines he'll use during this boss fight. He has one set of lines that are exclusive to when he's fighting with Cloud, and it has like lines like this that we have on screen, like "Fate will not be taken lightly, Cloud," but also like direct, you know, parallels to Advent Children, like the the on your knees beg for forgiveness line is in there. But if anyone else is targeting Sephiroth, like, and you're playing, say, as like Tifa fighting Sephiroth, like, he basically just snaps at everyone to get away from him and stop. It's very interesting choice. But anyway, like I said, when I originally did this panel, it was relatively it was not long after FF7 Remake had been released, and I didn't want to necessarily spoil the ending, but it's been like 3 years now, so I think we can actually watch the ending. So we're just going to kind of watch this, you know, because it has like a lot to offer when it comes to discussion dissection, and then I'm going to go back over it after we've watched it.
Careful now. That which lies ahead does not yet exist. Our world will become a part of it one day, but I will not end. Nor will I have you end.
This is...
the edge of creation. Cloud, lend me your strength. Let us defy destiny together.
Never.
Not yet. Seven seconds till the end. Time enough for you, perhaps. But what will you do with it? Let's see.
Oh, geez, you actually have to look at something like the ending, because I actually let it play all the way out to the end. Let me get us to the next slide. Nope, next slide, please. Thank you. So we're going to talk about the scene in more detail. Like, to get us started, there's the fact that Sephiroth's touch here actually stops one of Cloud's glitchy migraine moments. And also, he's he's touching Cloud's hand, though he's touching the wrist, not the actual hand itself, which is, I feel, kind of important. And we have the most loaded line, basically to me, in the entire game. There's so much debate about what's going on in the scene and everything, what everything means. But this line stands out. A major theme of the remake is being freed from fate and what the implications are of such freedom. And that Sephiroth takes this opportunity to, possibly try to upend the entire storyline with his newfound freedom of being unchained from fate. It raises a lot of questions as to what, is his end game. That was in one of the trailers. This is the same scene, just different shots. You have a better angle on Sephiroth's hand. And I love the fight scene between them. It's so, like, well choreographed. But after disarming Cloud, we have, like, another line that raises, like, a lot of questions about what this actually means. And this shot that kind of emphasizes both the closeness and the distance between the two. And then, like, you know, we end, like, on another one of those whisper shots. And we're going to have to learn, like, the exact context of these lines. There's a whole bunch of, like, different thoughts that kind of go back and forth as to kind of what's going on here. I have my own thoughts, obviously, but I'm curious to see kind of where they're going to take it. Before we get to the final wrap-up, I did want to momentarily touch upon some crossovers that FF7 has had with other games that help add to these readings. I'm actually going to talk a lot about Dissidia Opera Omnia. Because it often functions as like a follow-up to various FF titles. Now, there's a lot of content in Opera Omnia. There's like over 2,000 cutscenes in that game. So I'm just going to touch on some quick examples, and I've not like seen like all of them. I have only like kind of skimmed. But one of the major story beats is that Zack like recovers his full memories during Opera Omnia. Characters in that game are taken from different points in their various timelines and often have large gaps in their memories. And Zack makes the choice that what he wants to make the most of Zack makes the choice that he wants to make the most of his time here in this world, and he wants to do it with both Cloud and Aerith. An earlier scene has a comment that for Zack, respite, which is sort of like the term that gets used in Opera Omnia, sort of like, you know, like what you seek at the end, you know, or could even like push to be like your idea of like heaven would be to have both Aerith and Cloud by his side. We also get this cute little scene with Tifa and Aerith, where Tifa immediately leaps to protecting Aerith alongside Cloud when they both find each other again in this world, which I thought was very cute. Rito and Rude are given the do not separate treatment and are brought to the world together. Also, bonus, we have another example of Zack trying to invite people to dinner with him, which I always think is super cute. And of course, we have Sephiroth continuing his pursuit of Cloud. Now, people know that I'm not a big fan of Kefka. However, I am okay with Kefka purely in his role as being like a character who's allowed to provide fourth wall commentary on the plot. And given Sephiroth's tendency to follow Cloud into just about any other crossover, there's one in particular that I want to talk about. No, it's not Smash, but I just find Sephiroth following Cloud to Smash to be hilarious. Also, I promised my wonderful setup team that there was going to be a 30-second cutscene that's just here because it's funny. So here you go. I'm going to leave myself unmuted because I'm probably going to just die laughing over this one more time. I found this while looking for screenshots.
失望したい。
Just the pan over his sword. It's so long. Okay.
But Kefka's just trying to do Kefka things.
Kefka's just trying. Like, the thing is Kefka is actually like fairly okay in that scene. Kefka's just like, aw, come on, let's all be pals. I love the fact that in Dissidia, all the other villains hate Kefka. Like, that's the one thing everyone agrees on in Dissidia is no one likes Kefka.
I mean, when you decide to build a monument to non-existence, doesn't tend to make you friends.
It's true. But anyway, I get to make this joke now. When we were talking about like setting, hello, thank you Google Sheets. So I was asking Crime what I was allowed to talk about. I asked if I had permission to talk about one particular scene from the Mobius FF7 crossover event, which is probably one of the most suggestive in terms of content, language, and cinematography. So we get a glimpse of what would happen if Sephiroth achieved victory over Cloud, and it is specifically not killing Cloud. Earlier in this event, Sephiroth flat out states he has no plans to kill Cloud. He just wants to toy with Cloud until Cloud knows quote-unquote true despair. And we're just going to see what Sephiroth considers victory in this case. I really prefer the Japanese version of this over the English one. The English one was kind of one of the last things done by the old set of English compilation voice actors, and you can kind of tell they were really phoning it in, and I don't blame them. So we're going to listen to this in Japanese, but hopefully this works. I'm going to give you a translation on the side. This is just taking like the official translation. I'm gonna do my best to time it.
忌々しい守りだな。
悪くないマテリアだ。
マテリアか。まだそれがマテリアだと思っているのか。
なんだと。
時は来た。
クラウド。
それは私からの贈り物だ。魔航路のエネルギーを食らってお前の身に魔鋼の力を注ぐ。その贈り物を介してお前は傷を癒し力を得た。私の思念に染まった力。お前の血には私の思念が巡っている。すでに私の人形だ。さあ帰ろう。約束の地を目指すリユニオンの時だ。
So, like I said, we stuck a lot to the English localizations and the English voice acting. But for Sephiroth, I prefer his Japanese voice actor, which is Toshi. Oh God, like I'm blanking on like his first name. No. Toshiyuki Morikawa. Hey, I got there. And we talked a little bit about the choices made with character design, right? It should probably be noted that Toshiyuki Morikawa is one of the most like preeminent BL boys love voice actors out there. And I know it probably didn't influence picking him to be Sephiroth's voice actor, but at the same time, the fact that you picked the literal like emperor of like gay romance, like for like anime and like audio dramas to play your villain, again, choices. Also, in case you had any questions about who wrote this scene, it was Nojima, who has been FF7's writer the entire time. So even though this is a crossover event, you can take the incredibly, like almost downright explicitly kinky tones from this as effectively canon. So thank you, Crime, for letting me talk about the existence of that scene.
For reference?
Yes.
Schala sends this to me. I'm at work and makes reference to this. I almost died. was dying laughing. I'm like, there's no way.
And see, I told you. It was exactly what I told you it was.
You weren't kidding.
I was not kidding at all. But hey, we get to the wrap-up section. Yay! So for the wrap-up, I did briefly want to talk about how the devs over the years have encouraged fans to make up their own interpretations of characters and the relationships between them. One of the most famous ones is an interview from 2005 with Nomura from Dorimaga magazine. He was asked directly, like, has Sephiroth ever had, like, a crush on a woman? And his reaction was like, I've never thought about that! And then he goes on to say, honestly, I don't care who loves whom. I think you can imagine the scenarios that we don't mention however you want to. You can enjoy talking about that with friends. And then in Advent Children Limited Edition, he goes on, like, you can interpret or understand things as you like. For example, the wolf that sometimes appears, or the statue of the angel, we have our own answer. But if you interpret something, that is also an answer. So you can enjoy exchanging your opinions with friends. So I guess I did good on that suggestion. And I do want to give, like, a shout out to, like, the fans who have been doing that. There always is and always has been a queer Final Fantasy VII fan communities, like, since the very, very, very beginning. And everyone sort of brings their unique experiences and interpretations, you know, to this world and their love of the characters. And if you know where to look, it's really easy to find like-minded fans who will happily share all of this with you. I did want to give a very special shout out to Limit Break, which was the trans theme FF7 zine and merch project. And it's just like this wonderful example of queer fans, you know, sharing and collaborating to celebrate their version of FF7. You know, FF7 is this, like, inherently messy and complicated world, and it's inhabited by flawed characters who are driven by contrasting ideologies. And it echoes our own world in these really poignant and haunting ways, even with its many fantastic sci-fi and fantasy elements. You know, speaking personally, I know that the many possibilities for queer readings is a part of the lasting intrigue and appeal. I know many other queer fans who feel the same. So many of us who grew up with the original game and alongside the compilation and are now experiencing the remake have found ourselves drawn to these characters. And for a number of us, it has provided, you know, one of many small steps towards working out our own messy and complicated identities. I didn't tell this story into the introduction, but I'll sketch it out now. FF7 was like one of the reasons why I came out after spending a long time closeted, because this story and the ability to interpret these characters in lots of queer ways led me to my partner Oren, and they have helped me so much with coming to terms with myself, first as being bisexual and then later as being genderqueer. And so to this day, like, Oren and I still discuss and analyze this story. You know, literally the last time I saw them, we were talking about the new Rebirth and Ever Crisis trailers and how we're excited to see where this goes. And so sharing FF7 with them and knowing that they see what I do means really more than I can express. And for that reason, FF7 will always have a special place in my queer little heart. So, we got some time here at the end. If there is Q&A from the chat, please feel free to let me know if you have any questions after all that. Also, I realize I still have the Sephiroth plush up, but that's fine. He can stay.
Well, I know we had a question right at the very beginning up from Critique Quartz, who wanted to ask why everyone thinks Sephiroth is so hot.
I think we kind of covered it. Like I said, Tetsuya Nomura made some very sexy decisions with that character design. I'll give you, like, a fun fact. Originally, like, if you look back really early FF7 files that we had, Sephiroth's like first pass at character design actually ended up being Vincent's character design. They found that it didn't work for Sephiroth, so they gave it to Vincent instead. And then they went back to the drawing board with Sephiroth. There's like an in-between sketch that exists where it's Sephiroth in a soldier uniform with the coat, but still with the shirt. I don't know what led to them removing the shirt, but I think they made the right choice there.
I mean, I agree.
I agree.
I also agree.
I mean, there's definitely, we didn't talk about like the very end of like the original game, but there's definitely a choice to, have one final confrontation with the villain, and he has absolutely no shirt on. It's like, why? Why does Sephiroth have no shirt on when he goes to when he and Cloud face off in the middle of Cloud's subconscious? It might be Cloud's subconscious. We're not entirely sure, but that was a choice that was made.
I mean, he does get his legs back, though.
He does get his legs back, though. I'm so proud. Well, I mean, that's also a mental projection of him. So, which always kind of had his legs.
That's also true.
Well, and shoutouts to the modding communities for making it so that you can always play with shirtless Sephiroth when you play Final Fantasy VII.
Oh, you can play with more than just shirtless Sephiroth in the remake, but that'll let you all find those mods yourself. I mean, also give a shout out to the people who have modded in the wall market dresses, so you can just wear them all the time. Also, people who are truly doing the goddess's work. But I definitely do look forward to seeing where we go. Like I said, with both Ever Crisis and Rebirth, like around the corner. As we were doing setup, I was talking about how I pre-registered for Ever Crisis, and I hope I get picked for the closed beta. We'll just have to see what ends up happening. All I know is that apparently there is like a whole extra fight between Cloud and Sephiroth, and I'm like, all right, how much of this is metaphor at this point?
Yes.
Yes. Yes. I didn't even get into with the whole Mobius thing. That there's a whole scene before that, like I said, where Sephiroth's like, I'm not going to kill you yet. Where he's saying that, with, the Masamune, stabbed into Cloud. Like he does. But I'll give one last call, if there are any questions from chat. And you are totally cool, on Discord, to always hit me up about FF7 stuff. I'm always happy to talk about it in DMs. You can also find me on Twitter. If you, I'm hoping to get back to sort of streaming more regularly, mainly because I have to practice for some upcoming events. Though on my channel, I actually do have a channel points for make Schala have to tell you random FF7 facts. So.
Back to the $7.77 for a Final Fantasy VII fact.
Listen. One of my things that I want to do over the next few months is I want to learn the Crisis Core Reunion speedrun, purely for the fact that I could get on couches and then be allowed to talk about Crisis Core Reunion for an hour and a half, or run it, probably at some events, and I'm just going to talk about Crisis Core. Will I talk about any of the actual strats I'm doing? Probably not. Nah. Also, I will here. I'll do a self call out. I will self call out myself that when we did the Zack scenes, the I love you scenes, how I also managed to sneak in my favorite Crisis Core only character. So shoutouts to Lazar Deus Ericus, to me and the dozen other people who actually care about him.
Hooray for caring.
Hooray for caring. That's okay. Literally, the dozen of us who who like Lazard, we all agree that he's queer. Or like no one goes around with like you can't see it, but he has a giant belt buckle that's of a chess knight, and it's like, why? Why do you do this, Lazard? Why do you make so many choices like this? And also just shout-outs to Nojima, who basically said that he came up with Lazard as a character because he could not picture Sephiroth taking orders from Heidegger, but he can picture Sephiroth taking orders from a nerdy blonde, and in that, me and Nojima are once again in perfect agreement. But
who am I to disagree?
But anyway, thank you everyone for stopping by, for watching this, and for putting up with the tech issues. But hopefully I can get like fixed like ahead of doing this panel again. I will probably, like I said, keep doing this panel as more stuff comes out. Which is amazing that I get to say that there's going to be more FF7. I legitimately, like I said, as you can tell, I love this game. This is my favorite sort of game media experience out there. And I am incredibly excited that, one, there's going to be more of it, and two, I have no idea what's going to happen. And I know everyone has like their own opinions about the remake, but the fact that I get to play FF7 and not know what's going to happen is a joy I never thought I would have again. So that's why I'm really excited. But thank you all so much. Leave Abbie, we'll kind of throw it over to you, and you can do her...
Just before we go, Allie,
yes.
Where can we find you?
Oh, yes, Allie.
I can be found on my Twitch channel, or I hang out a lot in the Free Enterprise Discord. I do lots behind the scenes there.
You do a fabulous job of it.
And thank you both for being here. We'll be right back. What a fantastic showcase. Just a reminder to everyone that Schala will be in the Lady Arcaders Super Showcase coming up July 6th to July 9th. But in case you're wanting more, your appetite is not satisfied to wait till July 6th, we are here every Thursday and Sunday, so there's something for you then. Again, thank you all for being here so much, and we will see you on Thursday.